to Inside Politics. I'm Dana Bash, live from what's left of the Democratic National Convention site in Chicago. The balloons are now deflated, the confetti swept away. Democrats, of course, are hoping the energy and excitement of last night will carry them into November. The reality is the next 73 days are going to be a dogfight. The race will likely come down to a small number of voters in just a handful of states. A top Democrat tells CNN that Kamala Harris remains, quote, clear-eyed about what comes next, and she's all too aware that momentum Democrats are feeling could easily wane. But for now, her party is basking in the magnitude of this moment.
On behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Joining me now here at the table, CNN's Audie Cornish, Ested Herndon of the New York Times, and Jasmine Wright of Notice. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
I got up here and I turned around and I went, oh,
We're awake.
that's sad. Are we?
I mean,
Okay, I'm going to go with that.
We're awake, adjacent.
Well, since
We're
you're
here.
so awake and you obviously got a very good night's sleep, and you've had a chance to digest last night, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that after this long week of kind of a party, kind of a revival of energy and even expectations for Democrats, it was fascinating to see Kamala Harris come out and give a kind of sober, steely, let's get down to business kind of speech. She did her biography, and I think that she did it effectively, but by the end of the night I felt like, oh, we also have a lawyer in chief, and she wanted to look like commander in chief. And the images you would see of her today on the front of your local paper is of one looking presidential. And really sending the message that, okay, now the actual work of winning this is about to begin.
I think that comes through. I think it's a reflection of who she is. I mean, the lens of identity that I think is best to understand her is probably through that prosecutor lawyer sense. I think that came through in the speech. For me, it felt like a week where the Democratic Party did more than just pass the torch from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, but from kind of an older version of the party to reintroducing the country to a different version of Democrats, one that has a more diverse bench, one that has a new roster of electeds that have come up in the post-Trump era and look and talk differently. And I think that came through all throughout the week, whether it was Raphael Warnock, whether it was Josh Shapiro, whether it was some of the, Gretchen Whitmer and others. You had some people who had their legacy moments. I'm thinking about Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden.
And Bill Clinton.
And Bill Clinton, certainly. But it really felt like a party that was introducing you to their next step. And I think Kamala Harris is the tip of the spear there, but there's a top to bottom kind of transformation for Democrats that has been coming over the last several years. But frankly, Joe Biden has been kind of keeping that lid on, he has kind of been a filter that's not allowed that to really jump out because so much of the focus has been on him being a backwards looking figure. Now that that's no longer there, I think it comes through more clearly.
Jasmine, you covered the then Senator Kamala Harris and her campaign for president back in 2020 for us here at CNN. I know because I saw your work behind the scenes how much you got to know her and the people around her. Given that experience, what are your thoughts and what are you hearing from your sources about last night and the way forward?
Well, they're incredibly excited about last night. I think that's something that folks around the vice president recognize is that she's not maybe the best speech giver, but they were incredibly impressed with the speech that she gave. They felt it was both meticulously planned, that it struck all the right notes. I think following her for so long, one thing that you always hear is how difficult it is to get her to talk about herself, get her to reveal personal anecdotes. And even though I've covered her since 2018, there were some things that she said on stage that even I hadn't heard before, really trying to give these personal anecdotes that not just explain who she is, but also stands in contrast to the former president. And so I think that that was a major, major part of it that shouldn't be understated. But people around her are excited. They feel that she did a good job. But going forward, I think to Audie's point, they recognize that that is when the real work begins. And she wants to stay focused on winning in November.
Oh, can I just add
Yeah,
one more
of
thing?
course.
Because we're going to move past without talking about this. It was also fascinating to watch Democrats put to bed a bunch of grudges and sort of frustrations, right? The
Right.
reception Hillary Clinton got, Elizabeth Warren being in tears, right? Bernie Sanders, whoever it is, there was in a way a kind of unfinished business from
Closure.
it looked like closure at the start of the week. Maybe not for Joe Biden. I think that for him this was still very bittersweet. But watching some of the old guard come on stage, they came on in a position of like, we get it, you're saying thank you, because maybe the next generation is coming.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that was not said explicitly at all by Kamala Harris was the historic nature
Yeah.
of her candidacy, whether it be gender, whether it be her race, her background. Although she did talk about the fact that she is a daughter of two immigrants.
Yeah.
Which I was trying to remember, and we can talk about this another time unless somebody just happens to know, like when was the last time we had, if she wins, a president who both of whose parents were not born in America. I mean, even George Washington, I think his parents were both
Right.
born
Yeah.
in the colonies. But in any event, I'm sure we'll find out the answer to
Yeah,
that.
the internet will
Yeah, they'll tell us.
get on it.
Tweet at us.
Yeah.
So maybe she didn't talk about
Right.
it, but it was not lost on
Sure.
everybody, including, and I just want to give a shout out to your story, Jasmine. Black women leaders see decades of struggle vindicated in Kamala Harris's ascension.
Yeah, I think it's two parts, right? This is a vice president who has never wanted to talk about
Never.
her blackness, her womanness. That is not a new phenomenon. I know that people are coming to the beat and writing about it, which is important, but it is not a new thing that she's never wanted to talk about. She's allowed always people to talk about it for her. She does not want to be pigeonholed. She does not want to be just the president for Black America, I think, as people have said. She doesn't want to be the president for just women, although those are two very important parts of her identity. Southeast Asian people. So that is just a facet of her being, and it's really never going to change, no matter how much people want her to embrace that talk, those kind of talking points. Secondly, though, I think that Black women really do see the through line between folks like Fannie Lou Hamer, who gave that first testimony at the Democratic Convention in the 1950s. To Shirley Chisholm, who was the first Black elected woman of Congress, and then the first Black woman to run for the Democratic nomination. They see those struggles that Black women have really clawed through to make a pathway that the vice president is now enjoying and trying to create her own pathway. The vice president is somebody who, even though she doesn't talk about her Blackness, and even though she doesn't talk about her womanness or her Asianness in that way, really understands the responsibility and the pressure that it means to come first. This is something that her aides and people closer have talked to me a lot about. She recognizes it and feels it on her shoulders. And so,
And I also feel like, I mean, some of the conversation, is funny to me because what do we want her to say? Whether she says
Yeah.
it or not, the reality exists. Kamala Harris has been a woman of color every day of her life, and everyone knows that. You look
Yeah.
at her and
But
know that. I
even,
think
but even the
fellow-
female thing, like Hillary Clinton talked about breaking the glass ceiling and so
So,
forth.
and I think people spoke to that somewhat on stage. I think about
Yeah.
Michelle Obama's statement about she's a testament, she speaks, her dignity is a testament to her mother, my mother, maybe your mother too. There was a through line, I think, trying to
Absolutely.
connect people across a lot of ways. Barack Obama didn't really talk about his identity and Blackness that specifically. I think there's a sense that, if you put that in the air, then maybe that, it kind of complicates it
Wow,
politically.
I get that.
I would also say, though, to Jasmine's point about Black women working for this moment,
Yeah.
it was not inevitable that there was this smooth of a transition from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. we know from the reporting that folks have done for a long time, including myself and Jasmine and others, that there was a lot of fear about Kamala Harris. There's a lot of whispers about Kamala Harris not being someone
Inside
who can
the party.
take off,
They weren't.
who
Well,
can
that
take
was
over the party.
They weren't just
Inside the
whispers.
party.
Yes, there was open speculation about
Yeah.
replacing her from the ticket, and there was a lot of concerted effort that went into the moment that went from when Joe Biden had that debate until now to make sure that this party was as unified around Kamala Harris as we saw this week.
But that's
And a lot
part
of that
the
work
through
was
line,
done
right?
for a lot of that work was done by Black women in the party.
I want to talk about what she did emphasize, and you talked about prosecutor in chief, commander in chief. The way she talked about the